Very good.
All
Let's
righty,
do it.
folks. Welcome to the Organizing the Green New Deal course. This is class number 10. Today, we are joined by Justin J. Pearson and Kathy Robinson, who will be joining us briefly from Memphis Community Against the Pipeline. And this is a real treat. This is an amazing group of organizers in Memphis, Tennessee, who have been putting up a great fight against a crude oil pipeline that thought it was in for an easy ride through their community. And so looking forward to hearing about the campaign and the lessons so far, and to introduce folks who haven't heard that much about this fight yet to what's going on down there. So Justin, I'm going to pass it over to you and feel free to take it from there.
Fantastic. Well, Nick, the amazing Breach Collective team, it is with immense gratitude and honor to be able to be with you today and to talk about the fight happening here in Memphis. It has been, we're almost 6 months old, and so we're relatively new, but it has been an extraordinary effort to build justice and to build a movement that is happening here. And it would not be where it is without Breach Collective. And so let me start there, because that's true. One of the first big actions we took was to take on the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. And we did that about 24 hours after meeting Nick. And Kathy had started writing an appeal. And then it was like, hey, this is due tomorrow. Can you help us out? And Nick uses his legal powers and puts together something that looks so much more official, and helps us to begin the fight and the campaign. And throughout the course of the past several months, from campaign strategy to connections, it has been nothing but an honor to get to know this amazing team of people and to do this work together. And so really thankful to you. And to those of you gathered here for this class, I'm glad that you're willing to spend a little time with us today. I am most excited for answering any questions you have as our battle is ongoing to create justice here in Memphis. And we are continuing to work collaboratively and could actually use some of your help, because everybody can be a part of this movement. And so with that, let me go through a few slides here to get you caught up on what's going on, tell you a little bit about some of the successes that we have been very blessed and fortunate to have, and some of the work and kind of what it looks like moving ahead. So we are Memphis Community Against the Pipeline, MCAP. And we're against Plains All American and Valero Energy Corporation creation of a Byhalia connection pipeline that would bring oil from Oklahoma down through Memphis, Tennessee, and Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico for export. This pipeline is one of the supreme cases of environmental racism and degradation that we know of in the country. We were called the path of least resistance by Plains All American's land agent. And we have shown that we are really the path of resilience. You can see in these photos here some of our first rallies of people holding signs, one of our more recent ones of this young youth and kid holding a sign talking about protecting water. See, we're in a battle for our future, not just our present. We've inherited good water, we've inherited a struggle for justice, and we hope to continue that struggle in a way that is meaningful and that is truthful to the people who come before us. And so before I continue, let's pray for just a moment. God of justice, thank you. Thank you for this group assembled to think, to work, to believe that there is a better way for us to be united and to be together. In these moments, use my voice or any of my colleagues who join in order to speak for those who have too long been deemed voiceless. We believe that there is a better way, and we want to work toward it together and in unity. In this we pray in Jesus' name, and together we say, amen. We start with the people, because this struggle is really about the people who have been sacrificed for too long. It's about the people who have faced injustice for too long. It's about people, particularly Black folk, and Memphis, Tennessee, who are taking the fight to the multi-billion-dollar companies. You see here a picture of Marie Odom. She is the daughter of Clyde Robinson, an 80-year-old African-American gentleman fighting to keep his land. You see Scotty L. Fitzgerald inherited her land from her grandmother, from her mother, who purchased land in the 1930s. Just as fiery and energized of anybody you will meet, because she knows what's at stake. It is a fight against systems of inequality and injustice, just as much as a fight to protect her land from having oil in it or water disrupting over 1 million people's drinking supply. And we know that pipeline companies have a way that they operate that are challenging to overcome. And some people have been affected and impacted by that. And so if you look at Mr. Jeffrey Alexander and Mr. Joseph Owens, two people who the pipeline company has taken their land and has tried to pay them off, right? But there's no real amount of financial money that can give them back their land. And we'll see some quotes from Joseph Owens that say that, and we fight for him too. And he says, you know, I know what they were doing, Justin, when I talk with them. And I need y'all to keep fighting on. And so we are. And we're trying to gather as much information as we can, educate the community as much as we can, as well as we educate ourselves, and then activate our community locally, statewide, and nationally to create change. And here's why. Our community is overburdened with toxins. We have over 17 toxic release inventory facilities within the South Memphis community, Southwest Memphis in particular. We have 4 times the average cancer rate in South Memphis. And it is because this community, right, that is now being overpolluted is the very same community that was redlined in the 1940s and that has been deprived of economic, political, social power. And so we are in a fight because Byhalia Connection Pipeline by Plains All American and Valero Energy Corporation seek to build their pipeline through this very community. Right? Seek to exploit this very community that makes $26,000 a year, where the average age is 61. But in places where there have been people who have been disempowered, we think there's an opportunity to create power. And so we got to start telling the truth, right? Who is this really benefiting? Right, this graphic by Michaela, she's amazing. If you need somebody to do graphics, I'll get you her information. But you can see they're going to make at least $7 billion a year. And they have told our community that they're going to give $1 million in philanthropy. You can barely see it. And that is the truth. They've dispersed $1 million across the city and the Mississippi and DeSoto County to try and convince us that there's a benefit of this pipeline, when we know that there isn't. The profits of a company are being borne by the people. And so we have an opportunity to choose profits over people. We have an opportunity to choose water and life instead of the profits of Valero and a Houston-based oil company, Plains All American. But we're fighting for so many reasons, including our people and our water supply. Memphis has some of the best drinking water in the world. And the reason we have this is because we get our drinking water, unlike most people, from what's called an aquifer. It's hundreds of feet deep. The water can be aged into the thousands of years. And we are able to have a well field that like pumps that water up. And we drink it. And when y'all come to Memphis, we'll make sure that you get some. I know Kathy's joining now, but we'll make sure, and she'll hold me to it, that you'll be able to drink the water and you'll be able to enjoy it because we won't have oil in it, because we're going to stop this pipeline. But if you look at this image, you can see where a wellhead or wellhead protection zone 2 is what it's called. Let me get really professory since how we're here. So we have a zone that is supposed to be protected because there are well fields run by our public utility, Memphis Light Gas and Water, but it's a misnomer. There's actually no protection. The federal government said that they won't protect it. The state government said that they won't protect it, and the local government has yet to protect it. But April 20th is coming, where a vote is going to be taken on whether or not we will finally protect our drinking water. Why is this worrisome? If you look on the periphery here, there's a known breach in the clay layer. And so there's a hole where the oil, when it spills, not if, but when it spills, would get into our aquifer. We had a report done by hydrogeologist David Douglas J. Kostler and learned that it takes between 3 to 5 years for that oil to contaminate our water. And just 1 pound of crude oil would contaminate 25 million gallons of water. So they're putting a pipeline through a predominantly Black community, making $26,000 a year. And then they're doing this in an area where there are known and what we know of as potential breaches in the clay layer. More study has to be done. We think there may be some other ones. Known or potential breaches in our clay layer that separates our ground from our water, which is protected through clay. And it's one of the most seismically active zones in the southeastern part of the United States. Like the consequences are real all along the path of this pipeline. We're talking about an area where there are all of these potential breaches or known breaches. And when it's going into Mississippi, we're not out of the clear yet, right? This is called a recharge zone. So when it does rain, that water seeps down into the clay, and over years and years and years, it replenishes. It filters itself. And so we're talking about real risk to our drinking water, and an opportunity is coming on April 20th for folks to actually choose Memphis, our city council to choose Memphis and choose to protect our citizens from any organization, any company that would seek to put something like crude oil, which has benzene and all these other harsh chemicals inside of the ground. But there's another problem that we want to talk about called eminent domain, and the misuse of eminent domain. And I'll hand it to Kathy to talk through this one.
Thank you, Justin, and my apologies to everyone for being a little late. But yes, as Justin alluded to, several of our homeowners in the area resisted selling their properties to this oil company. They knew that the sacredness of their land was something that they did not want to sell an easement for. Several of these people were forced and manipulated by the pipeline representatives into doing so. Here you have above on the left, Miss Scotty Fitzgerald. Her mother brought the property at a time when Black people, especially women, were not easily able to purchase property. So this land is especially, it holds a special place in her heart. She mentioned on one publication that it feels like someone is robbing you of something that has been so sacred to your family. And she is one of the individuals now that is fighting not to sell an easement to this company. Below her, we have Mr. Owens here, who said that he felt as if his back was against the wall and he had no support. He was actually told by this company that he was one of the few people that were still holding out. He knew that he could not afford an attorney to fight a billion-dollar company. So he felt compelled to sell his property. And these are the type of stories that you hear from homeowners that were forced to sell their property. Some individuals were told that if you do not sell, we're going to take you to court and you won't get as much money as we're trying to settle with you for. And you're going to lose in court and you might just end up with $150. So some people, with that being said, felt compelled to sell. This company has bullied several residents into selling to them. Next slide. And also, this is just some of the things that Plains American, All American has done in this country. You can do a small amount of research on this company and you will find that they do not have a good track record, right? Also, one of the reasons that we're trying to keep this pipeline out of our community. If you look at them, one of the first incidences that might first come up is the 901 line in Refugio Park in California. They wasted 140 gallons of crude oil in this community, and it was California's worst spill in 25 years. If you also research this, one thing that you will also see is that they were even slow to report this. They didn't even want to report it. And it was until someone else saw this that it was reported. If you look again, there's another spill, the Rainbow Pipeline. They were involved in a dozen more spills since 2004. In 2015, the spill sent 4,000 gallons of crude oil into waterways around Illinois. So you can see wherever this company builds pipelines, they also cause spills. which is another reason why we don't want them in this community. The Department of Transportation has cited them for 212 incidents at Plains Run facilities from 2010 to 2019. So that is, like Justin said, that's one of the things what we're telling our politicians. If you look at this company's history, Memphis should not accept this company, regardless of if they receive state permits, regardless of if they have received federal permits. Our city leaders, our county leaders should stand with their constituents and say, no, this company is not good enough for us and our residents deserve better. And as you can see with this company's history, once Attorney General in California, Kamala Harris, she indicted this company. This company was convicted of felony water spill charges, right? Like they are they're criminals. That's what I tell people. They are criminals. They were convicted of felonies. She's quoted as saying crimes against our environment must be met with swift action and accountability. And again, if you research this company, there is still no accountability with them. They're placing the blame on this pipeline for some of the workers that were contracted to work. This company does not believe that they have done anything wrong in this case. Again, a grand jury even indicted them on 46 charges, including those 4 felony charges and 42 misdemeanor charges. So again, in Memphis, we're saying we don't want them. Justin, you can take it over from here.
Excellent. Okay, there we go. Excellent. Thank you so much, Kathy. Let's keep going. So again, we got a history of spills, and this quote is just an important one. Plains prioritized the flow of oil over following their own safety procedures and failed to appreciate the impact a spill would have on the area and its residents. See, this is foretelling what we expect to happen in Memphis. It is not a question of if a spill would happen, but when. And we are already learning how this company operates based on those experiences, but also experiences that we're having now in Memphis. So during February, we saw one of the hugest flare-ups at the Valero oil refinery in South Memphis. As I showed you, 17 toxic release inventory facilities in South Memphis, one of them being the Valero oil refinery. And we are learning every day, every week, it seems, more about this flare-up where you had these unburned organic compounds. And recently, we learned that there was potentially sulfur dioxide into the 6,000 pounds burned in the air during this flare off that you could see all across the city. We learned, and it wasn't reported until recently, that in January of last year, they spilled over 800 gallons of crude oil in Fayette County, which is just a couple of counties over, related to actually the Dakota Access Pipeline and our brothers and sisters fighting there. Dr. Maya Angelou, she would say, when someone shows you or tells you who they are, believe them the first time. And so we don't have to just believe them the first time. We can believe them the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth and the 200th, right? This company is not changing the way that it is operating, but their playbook to separate the community with their philanthropy, their playbook, right? To have an African-American spokesperson on their side, like their playbook is similar to other things that we've seen across the country. And what we have learned and what we believe is that people power will be the thing that breaks them. Right, we actually believe that it's going to be our people power that helps us to fight and helps us to win. And we're starting to see some of those successes. And Kathy, you want to talk about the two that are on the screen there?
Sure, thank you. So what we have here again, we've been building a lot of momentum since MCAP formed and tried to build resistance against this project. So not sure if all of you are aware, but of course, Memphis is also the location where Dr. King was killed in 1968, unfortunately, at the Lorraine Motel. So there is a lot of history in Memphis, right? This is also one of the locations, and this is something that Justin says frequently, that Dr. King stated that the fight lives and dies in Memphis. So that's one of the things that we're continuing to do with MCAP. But we have had a bunch of rallies to galvanize and to try to motivate our community, not only our community, but our city people and people in our county. And we are seeing a huge difference, and our numbers are really growing and growing with the people that have been supporting us. But we've also been getting national attention. CBS came to town and they interviewed Ms. Scotty Fitzgerald and Clyde Robinson, as you can see in the bottom left. In the middle, that's Mr. Clyde Robinson's family. They have been so instrumental in helping him and supportive of him. As many of you know, he's an elderly man, 80 years plus. So his family has been very supportive. It's a very beautiful thing to see his children and his grandchildren and saying that that's a piece of property that they want to own one day. And of course, they want to be able to offer that piece of land to the community, either versus a park or somewhere they can build something on, and offer that as a safe space for community people to come and not have to worry about an oil spill. As you can see in the bottom right, our county commission actually voted not to sell this company 2 vacant properties that they would need to proceed with the building of this pipeline. As Justin likes to say, they did choose Memphis, they did choose Shelby County. They did not vote to allow this company to buy those vacant lots so that they would have them in order to build. And because of that, this company has to go back to their planning process, right, and determine how they will try to circumvent that. We were hoping that it would discourage them from building this pipeline, but of course it didn't. They're going to continue to fight, as we will too. We will not stop either. And as you can see above that, the Memphis City Council passes the resolution to oppose the Byhalia oil pipeline. So again, even though the feds and the state has said this pipeline is okay to build in Memphis, our city councilors and our county commission has said, no, we're going to stand with our citizens and we're going to fight this pipeline and we're going to give it all we got.
That's fantastic. And this again is like the power of empowerment, right? It's the ability to then affect change. And I'll tell you just a quick story. And I'm the son of a preacher, and so I can go over time real quick. And Kathy got preacher vibes, so we can do this for a long time. So I'm going to be mindful because
we got plenty of time. Plenty of time. Listen, take all you need.
Fantastic. But I shared with folks that this movement, right, it is composed of a lot of private moments, right? The headlines are great and fantastic, and we celebrate those because they're the wins of thousands of people in our community, and we wanted people to feel that. I remember when we passed the county commissioners passed that motion. Nick, you were posting about it. You know, it's like we celebrate in the wins because we know how much it takes to get there. But how we got there, there was a young woman, Ayanna Hampton, who was watching the county commissioners vote, right? Vote, back room, committee meeting. We didn't see it. No one saw it, but she saw it. And she reached out to a county commissioner and said, hey, I think you guys just gave Byhalia some land. And we had previously planned to meet with every commissioner and every council person who'd want to meet with us. And Ayanna told Tammy Sawyer, who was the county commissioner, that they had sold some land on a Wednesday. And we had just so happened, our first meeting got canceled. So we had our second meeting on that Thursday. And she was like, I don't know what y'all want to talk about, but you need to talk about this, right? Like this is all you all need to be focusing energy on. And we are pretty spirit-filled people. And so we know God was working something out there. And we pivoted our everything we were doing to talking about this land, and getting people to send emails and all that. And we first got to bifurcate it, and then we got a solo vote on whether or not to sell them the land. But it's a testament to power, and that as much as we can feel disempowered at times, because of the way that our country operates and our systems, how they currently exist, is that the feelings of disempowerment are also constructed by systems of injustice, because we all actually do have power, right? Whether that power changes something, we can talk through, but nothing outside of not having internet connection or access to email, like can stop a person from sending one to a city councilor or sending one to a county commissioner. We can talk about why, half the country doesn't have access to high-speed broadband. Like that's another thing. But the need to remind folks that like our power individually becomes something collective. And when it is collective and it is cross-racial and it is all of these other wonderful things, we see wins like that happen. And like, have we stopped the pipeline yet? No, but have we changed the way that I think people will view themselves and think about power moving forward in our city, I do think we're starting to see that, and it continues, right? And we're really fortunate. I get to shout out our wonderful list of partners, obviously with Breach Collective, the Southern Environmental Law Center, Protect Our Aquifer, and so many other amazing folks. We got some other organizations, Tennessee Poor People's Campaign, now supporting us even more. And so we're going to court. We were able to join the lawsuits along with our landowners as MCAP. And so a judge granted us permission to do that. And so we'll be in court April 23rd in this eminent domain suit. We have sued the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers along with the support of the Southern Environmental Law Center, because the Nationwide Permit 12, it flies in the face of the National Environmental Policy Act. In addition to the Clean Water Act, it cuts out community input entirely from the process, and it does not pay attention to the reliance of over 1 million people on our drinking water. And so that lawsuit is going forward. And again, when we're talking about building power, it is both local at the state level and national. And so it was really fortunate to see Kathy on a national platform with the Poor People's Campaign speaking about the fight against the Byhalia pipeline and garnering national attention to this issue. And now she was so good, Reverend Dr. William J. Barber's coming to Memphis this Sunday to rally with us to protect our drinking water. We're really fortunate to have had Vice President Gore in Memphis rallying with us, calling the pipeline what it is, the racist, reckless ripoff, and having that allyship in this movement. It is the whispers from South Memphis that have turned into booming echoes across our country for one of the most significant fights we will have, and that we can win as long as we continue to do this work together. And so with that, we'd love to have the opportunity to answer some questions and just talk together with y'all.
Yeah, so folks, please feel free to send some questions in chat, and I'm going to take moderator privilege and ask a few up front here. But great presentation, and thank you all. So give us a little bit of an indication how things started, right? Because you got a big billion-dollar oil company coming to town saying, guess what, we're going to do this. We got all the money, we got all the power, we got all the connections, and we're just big and you're small. So we'll tell you what we're going to do, but that's what's going to happen, and be happy with a little bit of cash that we sprinkle. Then how did that turn into a movement that's passing laws at the local government, suing the feds, like putting the state on their back heels? How did that happen?
So yeah, Justin knew to stay on mute, because this is usually where I take over. So Plains All American, they decided to choose Memphis to Tennessee to build this pipeline to come through so they could transport oil to the Gulf. And in that, they held some open houses, several places in the community, several churches. These weren't very, they didn't get much attention. They didn't really advertise these so that lots of people could show up. They held about 3 to 5, maybe within a 4 to 5 month span in areas in Southwest Memphis as well as North Mississippi. And I believe maybe around March of 2020, they were done with those open houses. I don't think that they had any plans to come back to Memphis to speak with anyone. And around September, because I like to hang out on Twitter, that's where you get a lot of news. I saw a reporter with the Memphis MLK 50. That's a local publication in Memphis. They do great work. MLK 50, Justice Through Journalism. I follow the editor of the paper, and she retweeted an article that was written by a local reporter, and it was titled "Pipeline is coming through Boxtown" or something of that effect, and how residents were running out of time. Well, I'm a 4th generation resident of Southwest Memphis. I have relatives that live in Boxtown, so the title alone caught my attention. I read the article. Called my family members, asked them did they know about this. Some of them did, some of them didn't. The ones that did, of course, I asked them how did they feel about it. They said that they didn't want it. That was enough for me to reach out to some friends on Facebook. Another co-founder of MCAP, she posted on our high school's alumni page. Justin saw it and it was just like it lit a fire. We asked for another meeting. Like I said, because this was in September, Plains hadn't been to town since March. We asked for another meeting. They came to town on October the 17th. And that's when MCAP was founded. And Justin can kind of tell you guys how from that meeting, how we galvanized and what we did to accomplish what we had.
Yeah, and let me take speaker privileges here and give roses where they're overdue. Being here at this point in this moment in time in wonderful world history would not have happened if not for Kathy Robinson, right? And so folks see me in this afro and they're like, that guy. And I'm just like, no, that woman. Quite honestly, if you had not been on Twitter, if you had not started making noise about it or reading the paper about it and engaging, there is no way Memphis, a community against the pipeline would exist. And there's no way our community would have known to the detail that it now does. And so if you want a movement that's successful, make sure you got Black women around. And this one is due in most significant part, its existence is due to Kathy, not to me or our other co-founder. It was just the heart to do something and to share it. You know, in the Christian tradition, they talk about keeping it to yourself. And you didn't. And so I am grateful to help lead this work alongside you and want the world to know truly that there is no movement in Memphis had it not been for you taking an interest in the community where you're from and your family that's still there. And so I'm immensely grateful daily to you. Since October 17th, we started to meet 4 or 5 times a week. We had to learn what was going on. We had to figure out who is this company and what are they trying to do and who knows what. And so we went on an information gathering campaign. We started calling the neighborhood association leaders who Kathy had already made some connections with and said, tell us what you know. And we'll figure out, you know, how we can start to organize around it. But first, it was a lot of information gathering. And that's community listening required in order to find that out. I don't live approximately to the neighborhood. Kathy, so, okay, another thing. Kathy actually lives in Nashville, Tennessee, right? And does more work than anybody in Memphis to stop this pipeline. And so we talked to the neighborhood association presidents and other people who had attended some of those meetings. And we're talking about elderly Black folks, right? So getting on a Zoom and stuff was new to them, but my family has an account through my dad's church. And so we started to use that. And we've really organized this movement virtually. And so we started to talk, and then we just started to follow fires. And so the first one was at the state level, actually, which Nick knows all too well, with the aquatic resource alteration permit. And so we need to work there. And then we learned about the nationwide permit 12, and we were fortunate to hold a rally where our elected leaders were invited so that they can learn a little bit more. And you have to realize that nationwide permit 12 is intended, right, to exclude community voice. So even elected officials did not know, right, beyond what the PR company was telling them. And so MCAP has been the only source of more truthful information about this pipeline project in the city, the country, if you want to get, world, if you want to be really fun. And so we take that responsibility seriously and believe building those partnerships with other organizations who fought pipelines before, but also locally, who had an understanding of the aquifer and could connect with hydrogeologists like the Southern Environmental Law Center was important as we did information gathering locally on what people heard. It's also who knows how to fight this thing. And it's the fusion of that, right? We pride ourselves on being Black-led. There are not a lot of Black-led environmental justice groups in our region, despite the fact that I think and Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's like 94% of the toxins that are spewed from corporations are in Memphis. And so we did our super local neighborhood associations, found out who else had power. Tennessee State Department of Environment and Conservation, the federal government. So our congressman had to get involved, and we did that. It got him engaged, and now he's like an environmental justice champion. And then we learned, oh wait, there's more that can be done locally than we thought. And so we started to work a lot more locally with our city councilors, and God bless Dr. Jeff Warren. He was like, all right, I'm with you. And it was since then that we've been able to continue to catalyze this movement and get more people on board to where we had a unanimous decision from the city council that Kathy read to oppose the Byhalia pipeline, right? Like that is people power. That is it showing itself. And now it's, all right, what do we have to do the things that make sense, protect the water, and then what do we need to do more offensively to work to stop this crude oil pipeline?
Yeah, I would have to say I've been a part of several fossil fuel infrastructure fights, and going from the point of genesis to like getting action usually does not go fast. It's usually like quite a time of movement building, convincing people. And within like 3 months or something like that of coming into existence, MCAP has got both of their local governments there, basically the county a little less unanimous, but the city basically unanimously in support of like whatever this movement wants to try to stop the pipeline. It's been a pretty incredible journey to watch. So what's the, like, around organizing, like what is it about, is Memphis just special in this way that it was just like waiting to be organized? Like what kind of, what's working for you there? What are the things, how do you convince people to get into this fight? What are the types of messages that are resonating with people? Like why has it become so big so fast?
Oh, one of the things that I think that has been to our advantage is that, of course, Dr. King was killed in this area. And even though he was killed in 1968, I still don't believe that Memphis has fully healed, including our country, right? So, you know, we still feel as if are many things that we're fighting for. In Memphis, we still feel that we're fighting for a place at the table, even though this city is predominantly Black. Like we have a lot of leaders in our legislature that are not Black. And of course, we can see that they let companies and they let things come into our community that do not benefit us, unfortunately. And so I think something that worked to our advantage when MCAP was able to point these things out, I think that this was something that people could latch on to. Like, this city has a history of that, of passing the buck, letting our citizens down, specifically our Black citizens. And that what MCAP was saying. Now is the time for the city to stand with us. Because in the 60s, you guys didn't. In the 70s, you guys didn't. In the 80s, you guys didn't. Because we have a community in Boxtown, they were still fighting for electricity and water in their homes, some of those people, right? So we still have this history of this city not fighting for us, and specifically us in Southwest Memphis. So when we presented this first to our local folks that did know about this, I think that many of them didn't know about it, but once they found out about it, and when we gave them the information, like, there were a few routes that these people could have chose, and they chose us. They chose our community because they said this is the path of least resistance. They didn't think that we would fight. And so we are a community of fighters. Again, we are a community of proud people. And so we took that as an insult. And I think that kind of just fueled people in this community, and that fuel has kind of went over to everyone in Memphis. Well, not everyone, of course, but many people in Memphis and many people in Shelby County. But we're working on getting everyone on our side. Justin?
I totally agree. And I think something that's helpful, right? We have, what did you say, Kathy? I love that. We have movement history, right? And so we have the sanitation worker strike. Ida B. Wells is a Memphian. Robert Reed Church is one of the first Black millionaires, and he actually bought the bonds to the city after the yellow fever epidemic. There was a park that they were trying to run the interstate through and a couple of white women at that time, fought after they had torn down the houses, misused eminent domain, all that, fought for decades, for over a decade, to get the Supreme Court actually to say, oh, wait, no, you guys can't build the interstate highway there. So there's this legacy that we're a part of and that we are reviving. And King's quote, the movement lives or dies in Memphis. The movement lives here, right? That's what we are internalizing as a group and are sharing and showing with the community in the country, that the movement lives here. And truly, I'm biased, but it is what will happen in the South, where the majority of Black people are, right? Our ancestors, Kathy and mine, were enslaved in this country for centuries. And what will happen to their descendants, right? And what will be done to them or for them, or how will they act or rise up? And we saw a glimmer of that in Georgia, but what does that mean in this moment that is post the lynching of George Floyd, that changes the arc of history? And that's what's really happening, right? We're helping to build some history here, and the people are responding to it for a couple of reasons. And so I do think Memphis is unique for some reasons, but I think there are a few things that are happening, that's happening now, or that's helpful to us, that is worth sharing. So one, we're talking about water, right? Everybody drinks the water here. It's white, Black, wealthy, not wealthy, housed, unhoused, everybody drinks the water. And so you should have a vested interest in whether or not benzene is going to show up in your water, right? Or other contaminants that are carcinogens. And that's been helpful to us because there's a universality that is automatically connected that we don't have to fight for in the moral sense. It's just, it is. You need water to survive. They're threatening the water. If you don't do anything, they're going to make all of us suffer, right? And we love our brothers and sisters in Flint, but we do not want those same government decisions that hurt people and harm people to be repeated. And so that's like one thing that we actually have working for us, the universality of water. Two was, I think, the idea of the movement history that Kathy had mentioned. And because of the water and because of the message and because of the moment, we are able to build what Dr. Barber and the Poor People's Campaign calls a fusion movement. And so there is a level of diversity within our organizing that has not happened in living Memphians' memory. And we're talking about our elders, white and Black, who are just like, I haven't seen anything like this, right? And so Al Gore comes to church. He comes to a rally, but he comes to church. It is an extraordinarily diverse crowd. Still, I'd say probably majority African-American because we're 64% of the population, but lots of white people, right? And it was just like, whoa, like 500 during COVID, socially distanced. We take those types of things seriously, but that ability to have a fusion movement, I think, has been helpful to us. And then we're right? And we're right not because we are just morally right. We've got scientists telling us. We've got coalition partners in Protect Our Aquifer and Sierra Club telling us. We got Nick and Jay and the whole Breach Collective saying like, nope, like you guys, this is right, and here's how you fight because this is what injustice looks like. And this is actually how you can win, right? These are ways that you can win. And so having that certainty, right? Because we have access to people who have information and who have proximity and resources that we do not have as individuals, I think gives us a level of doggedness with like what's going on that I don't know if other places have, right? It's like, we've been told we're right. And then we read these reports. Kathy actually reads them. I get executive summaries. And it's like, all right, I just need what are the 5 bullet points? I'm not Trump though. Don't do that. I don't need pictures. I just need like the bullet points. And we take that and we say, okay, like this affirms what our core belief and principle is, that we can't stop the pipeline. We should stop the pipeline. This is wrong. And so everybody else, you just need to get on board, right? Because if you're not on board, then what we've had to do in a couple of cases, and I'll say it to this group because we're friends, it's like we have to kindly, encourage people by saying we're going to do very extreme actions, right? Like, for instance, protest at your funeral home on your busiest day. We have to just whisper it out there in case, somebody's like, no, I'm not trusting you all. And it's like, no, no, we're gonna what we are gonna do is care for the poor and the disenfranchised and the disinherited of South Memphis. Like what we are gonna do is protect people's drinking water, because who can't afford, what is it, Fiji and Dasani for the rest of their life, right? Like who are the people who can't afford that, right? Those are people in South Memphis. And so when folks are like hesitant to help, we go back to like, no, our cause is a moral one, and it's social, right? It's racial, it's environmental, it's economic. And so because of that, I think there's a spirit that we operate with, that like whatever we need to do, like let's do it. And so I think a lot of those points have helped to build kind of the momentum behind it. And just the last point, again, I told y'all, I'll keep talking. There's a level of privilege which we have to do this, right? So Kathy and I work, pretty much everybody on the team, but Kathy and I work full time, 50, 60-hour jobs, and have a level of flexibility. She's senior in her company, she works for the government, but she's senior, and I'm a senior person in our nonprofit that I work at. And so there's a level of flexibility. So we need to meet with the state senator at 11 o'clock. I can move a meeting, right? Like we need to have a coalition meeting and on Wednesday at 4. And so it's like, okay, yeah, I can make that work. And so there is something about the people who are able to do the organizing having a privileged social location, right? That you have to, if you care about justice, which we do deeply, it's our family history, right? I think Kathy said 4 generations, I'm 3 generations, that we're choosing to use in a community that does not have those same privileges, right? If people are making $26,000 a year, right, they're not junior executives at their firm, they're not directing programs across the state, right? Like this, they don't have a master's degree in public health, which Kathy does. And so it's like, oh, I care about this cause. I've got the ability to flex a little. How do I use that for folks who I know have been disempowered? And I think that too is a privilege. We can't, like, that contributes to our ability to be in this fight.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've definitely noticed is just the like tenacity and desire and willingness to fight. I think if there's anything that I've seen in a lot of successful fossil fuel fights, that's it, right? Where you just say, you make a choice that this isn't going to happen, and we're going to fight. We're going to use whatever tools are available to us and grow those tools over time, and just leverage it. And yeah, it's kind of humbling to, because I've been working in this world for like 10 years, and I'm like, this is about how long things take. So it is kind of humbling for people who are not paid to do this kind of work, and I just have come to it to like be so much better at me than I am. But it's really nice to watch and support. I've got a longer kind of question to read to you from Heather, who was a speaker a few weeks back. She said, I've been very inspired by some of the work and words of Tamara Tolles, former North American director of 350.org, who said that white-led movements spend a little too much time targeting legislators and not enough time talking and connecting people. And also by Adrienne Marie Brown, who said that rather than mobilizing people in the public eye, we need to think about critical connection over critical mass. We need to spend more time thinking about how we relate to ourselves and each other, and the attitudes we show up with, rather than getting more people to the place. That makes me think about Justin's point about private moments. So I'm curious what reflections you both have on those thought leaders as connected to your movement.
Deep. Go ahead, Kathy.
Right. So I could not agree more. Not as from what I've seen, but from what I feel and the approach that I think and that MCAP has taken. We have spent a lot of time targeting legislators, don't get me wrong, but we have also spent more time targeting our community people. As Justin stated early on, we wanted to target those community associations. We wanted to talk to those presidents, again, to see what they knew. We wanted to build relationships with them, to build trust. From that, we have wanted access to their members of the community associations, right? We want to speak with those people. Just here recently, Justin can tell you, I've been on this earth and living in my community. As Justin said, I now live in Nashville, but I'm still very connected to my community. I'm now a member of the local community association there. Had this pipeline not come up, I don't think that would have happened. But even beyond that, just yesterday, we've been fighting against this pipeline since October 2020. Just last week, we had one of our first meetings with another local neighborhood associations, and with the people that are members of that, telling them the plans that we have moving forward, asking them to contact local legislators. We have went into the community weeks ago for community cleanup. Justin will also be, and his family, his mom, will also be coordinating that with another local community. So it's all about, like you said, building that those community relationships. And from that, people are trusting us enough, again, to bring us into their spaces. And like Justin said, and with that, we're getting more people power. And when we talk to our volunteers, we have a small little volunteer network. We have met with them, of course, via Zoom, like we're meeting now, just so we can talk with them and engage with them. We don't want people to feel as if we're the untouchables. We want people to know that we're real. I think one thing is very important doing that is that we still learn and we know the concerns of those local people there in the community. This is never about MCAP, and that's the message that we want to convey and what we're saying. This is about continuing to build relationships here, fighting with this community, fighting with this city, and fighting with this county.
What role does spirituality in the church play in the movement in Memphis?
Every time we get together, we have church. They are deeply intertwined. So pretty much all the leaders or lead organizers, everybody who's close to this work has some spiritual background or faith, and it's paramount. And so I'll say, like, as an individual, right? Speaking as an individual, I've been in church since before I was born, and been in the Black church in particular most of my life, and almost all of us have. And so rooted in that tradition is actually social justice, right? So in the Black church, some of you may know this, you may not know this, the story of Exodus has like a lot of significance in our faith, right? And last year in particular, you couldn't go inside of a Black church and not talk about the story of Exodus, because we're at 401 years last year of being enslaved and in this country. And so this idea of freedom, right, and the seeking of it persistently, right, like, is deeply embedded in who we are. And in this movement, it is no different. And there's so many difficult days I think we have, even as a team, right? As we learn each other, as we celebrate wins, we suffer some losses in different ways. And how do you keep going, when that happens? Or at a time right before politicians were on board and they were just like, I forget what he said, thank you for your email, I'll monitor the situation. And you're like, you're gonna monitor like 44,000 people being run over by a multi-billion-dollar company, right? Because they're lower income and lower wealth, and you've disempowered and disinvested in them, right? Like, nobody but Jesus can keep you sane and stop you from saying things and doing things that you might not otherwise do. So I think faith and spirituality is deeply connected with this for sustaining purposes as people. But then I think it is important because at the foundation of this, it is a question about right and wrong. And we know, I think, at our core, what is right and what is wrong as it relates to this issue. It's a lot of gray areas in a lot of places, but we know what exploitation looks like. We know what manipulation looks like. And history has shown us what happens to Black folks who had land that somebody else wanted to take, right? Like history has shown us this playing out. And so to sit on the sidelines now, right, it's just morally irreprehensible. And so I think for sustaining purposes and for reminding purposes, to remember us to the cause, our faith in God is like integral. And so the last thing, the race goes not to the swiftest, right, or the smartest, or the strongest, but the one that endures to the end. And so for endurance purposes, right, having a belief in something greater that makes these connections happen. Like, Nick, there is no way we were supposed to meet you and y'all, right? Like, it doesn't make sense. Because I posted on my class page of college, 3 people liked the post. One person was like, that's cool. Let me connect you to a friend of mine who was like, this is cool. Let me post about it on a Slack for PowerShift Network and see what happens. And it sits there for like 2 weeks and nothing happens. And then this kid, Jay, like, is like, yo, this thing looked cool. What's up? And I'm like, what's up? No one else has liked, commented, replied, nothing. And he's like, all right. He stops responding for like a week or two. And I'm like, okay, who knows what's happening? We're just going to keep throwing stuff at the wall. And he's like, sorry, he got busy. Like, let's talk. I might be making this up. Go look at my Slack and you can tell me the truth. He's like, let's meet. So we meet. And he's like, Namati, which is his real job. He's on the board of Breach. And he's like, yeah, it's what we do locally, empowering communities with like legal power. And it's like, great, we're going to need that. Right. So we're super excited about that. And he's like, let me introduce you to like the folks at Breach. And how does that happen? Right? Like that you can't like make that, right? Create that. It is like, oh, like, did I go to some fancy elite college just for this Facebook post that helped us, right? Like, was that why this was for, what this was for? You know, and it really does put in stark relief, like why things do happen or what didn't occur and what did. But like, there's so much and so many of these moments. Like, why was Ayanna Hampton watching the county commissioners sell land to Byhalia? Like, why was she on there? Like, why wasn't her kid crying and she going to take care of the kid, right? Like, why did the first meeting with Tammy Sawyer get canceled, but the second one happened to be the day after she met with Ayanna Hampton, right? Like, all of these moments in the movement, and you alluded before, like these private moments, right? Like, they cannot be orchestrated by anything but God, right? And the spirit that's waking people up and that is sustaining people, that too is a spirit that is more significant than something I think that can be created by human hands. Kathy, what you thinking? Kathy also be preaching.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. From every rally that we have hosted with MCAP, it's a form of church. We refer to Bible verses. There has been some singing that has been happening, some hymnals at our rallies. So spirituality has been very strong in our movement. As Justin said, you know, when things happen, you know, we always point to, you know, nobody but God. You know, like Justin said, when we were, I don't even know what we were supposed to talk to Tammy Sawyer about. Like, when she came to that meeting, she said, I don't know what we're supposed to talk about, but here's what you guys need to know. When we first got involved with this, there were hardly any politicians. We had no capital as far as that went. And now when you look at it, you know, we have politicians' numbers in our phone. We don't have to email anymore. We can just pick up the phone and call. And again, we say, you know, nobody but God. You know, we point to how Southwest Memphis has historically been an area with a low amount of political clout, the disenfranchised. And now we're on national news, you know, Clyde Robinson, You know, that man who would go to just cut the grass on his cousin's property, you know, would pay taxes all these years. You know, now these people matter on a national level, and that's what we attribute it to. We know that we feel that there is a higher power guiding us through all of this, and is carrying us through all of this. So it has a big role in what we do.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. And I would say, you know, the other things that you all probably can't see from where you're at is all the other people that you inspire by the fight and the wins and all the rest, and that story coming out, because I think it has those reverberating effects throughout the country and the world as people see that. It's like, oh, you're allowed to fight and win. Like, I don't know how they're doing it, but they're doing it. And it's like, why can't we do it too? You know, and I think that stuff is amazing. Yeah, one of my favorite moments so far, and my girlfriend Emily, I think, shares this, was one of the first times that Justin was speaking at Memphis City Council, and it was like informational session, and there was a pipeline representative that was speaking, and she was supposed to speak for like, I don't know, 5 minutes, and she ended up talking for like 25 minutes, and the counselors was like letting her go on, and then they allowed another, like, I think he was a preacher at another church in the community, and they were maybe like selling space or something to Byhalia. He came on, and Justin came up right after him, and Justin like began his speech with like a prayer and like a call to justice, and just the like tenor of like how that switched things and the like context. I was like, wow, like that really is like a battlefield there that's being fought, and like just the storytelling of and the poetics of like who's standing up for the people that are being harmed is just like so powerful. So yeah, I'd say I've been like pre-moved by that as well myself, but watching that. So thank you for that. So kind of, you know, to recap, a fight started that you didn't necessarily pick and have stepped up and are battling, and as it stands, you know, the local governments are being engaged really strongly and are starting to buy in that this is a local issue and that they can win this fight if they want to. They can fight this battle. What are y'all looking for in terms of support? How can people who are not in Memphis help you in this fight to get to where you're going?
You know, Nick, be asking questions he could answer. And so, Nick, when I fail to mention something or Kathy does, please jump in. So there are a couple things, right? We're heading up to an important deadline of April 20th. And for us, that is the day that, well, let me put it like this. This pipeline revealed a lot of things, including what Kathy talked about as relates to the lack of investment in our community of South Memphis and Southwest Memphis more specifically. It also revealed the regulatory gaps that exist in protecting 1 million people's drinking water. And so we're saying, fill the regulatory gap by protecting the drinking water. And so Southern Environmental Law Center, all these other fancy lawyers looked at this document of an ordinance 7-8 pages long and said, here's how you can do it in a way that's thoughtful and that could actually, you know, accomplish the task, not of killing the pipeline, but of making sure people go through necessary regulations before you threaten 1 million people's drinking water. Our suburban sisters did this and brothers did this. We're trying to do it on April 20th. It is still a fight to make sure that that happens. And so if you go to memphiscap.org, memphiscap.org, you can take action, click the Take Action tab, and email the Memphis City Councilors. Tell them where you're from and say, I'm concerned about you all protecting the drinking water and want for you to do it. Email doesn't have to be long. It can just be like, water is life. Be smart here, right? A lot of people rely on this. We can't count these, but last we heard, the county commissioners got over 4,000 emails. And these types of emails, they don't go to spam, right? They're real emails from real people. And so we think they have a lot of power. Nothing against Action Network and all those things. But if you could just write that email, and we have everybody's email account on that website, memphiscap.org. That's one way I think folks can engage, particularly heading into Tuesday's vote. come to the rally. We want you there. Nick, I'll send the Zoom link as well, because I know folks are from away. And then I'm thinking more immediately, and I know there are some longer term things, but I know Earth Day is on Thursday, but Friday, you can make your Earth Day promise to come to court with us. So we are going to court on Friday as part of the eminent domain cases, and we're trying to pack the courthouse with 100 people. It's at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, at noon Eastern Time, so at 9 Pacific Time to 10 o'clock. We're going to be in court, and we want as many people there representing our landowners, Clyde Robinson and Scotty Fitzgerald and MCAP, so that the judge understands the gravity of the issue. It's not just local, right? It's not just statewide, but it's national and in some ways global. A friend from Japan is supposed to be on there. And so in the near term, you can write emails, you can join us for court, and you can continue to amplify this message. And so at MemphisCAP_org is our official Twitter and Instagram, at MemphisCAP_org. And we have a Facebook, Memphis Community Against the Pipeline-MCAP. We just hit 3,800, getting ahead of myself. Next week, it'll be 4,800. We just hit 3,800 folks, trying to get to 4,000 pretty soon, and excited about that growth. And so those are ways that you can very immediately amplify this story and this message, because there's still people in the country that don't know about it, and everybody should. Yes, I can do that too, Brenna. And we can follow up, and a follow-up email would probably be better, because I know the chat isn't going to be saved. Longer term, what do we need, Nick? Connections to foundations who have financial resources to help fund kind of the frontline work as we establish. Like Kathy and I love supporting our community. Our entire team does. And we know we need help because working 100-hour weeks, they do something to you, you know, and combining our other jobs. And so we're thinking about how we move this grassroots group into a nonprofit and into an organization that becomes one of the prominent voices in the South and in the country that talks about climate justice and talks about racial justice and the intersections therein. It is good to have white folks a part of and leading in areas talking about the two, but it is another to have folks with lived experiences leading the strategy for the work and engaging the community. And so we want to build this into an organization and an institution that continues to inform and educate the community and activate the community through advocacy and engagement in our political system, but also become a voice in the South and in our country about the issues of climate justice and racial justice. And now seems like a really good moment for that as we continue to bend that arc, as King might say. And so financially, that would be super helpful. And then tell the story, right? We were really fortunate to be on CBS, I guess a week ago. I don't have a sense of time anymore. Maybe it was a month ago, but recently we were on CBS with Gail King. But we are looking to continue to tell and inform more people. Vice News should be showing something this week. Maybe we'll be on Discovery Channel next week during Earth Week. But we have to keep telling the story. And this is a movement that everybody can be a part of. So you can volunteer with us, and you can engage in this struggle for justice. And we believe if we do it together, we can win. Kathy, what would you add, or Nick, that I may have forgotten?
I think you were spot on. I just want to reiterate, like Justin said, tell somebody about it. Tell someone about our website. Tell a friend or someone to join our Facebook page. The more people that we have talking about this throughout the country, I feel it benefits not only folks in Memphis, but folks all over. So continue to talk about this, continue to build awareness, because we know that companies such as Plains All American, they won't stop at Memphis, right? So the more we can get people talking about it, maybe, just maybe, this will be something that, folks will, these industries will kind of pause before they go into communities and say, let's think about this. This may be a bigger fight than what we're anticipating. So by all means, continue to talk about it with your friends and family members to build awareness about what's taking place in low income and marginalized communities.
Yeah, and I would also add, as far as kind of like accidents of history and unexpected turns of luck happen, Congress is talking about big transition bills right now, and the committee that's probably going to be most influential is the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and MCAP's representative Steve Cohen is a senior member of that committee, and then Peter DeFazio of Eugene is another senior person on those committees. And so there's a line to these movements being able to like advocate really strongly in the moment to try to get some national policy change too. And so if a couple of weeks ago, we had a guy named Saul Levin, who is Cori Bush's legislative staffer, talking about how if you're going to spend any time around Congress, and I know why people don't, but if you got 2 months that you're going to do this in the next 10 years, like make them these next 2 months. So I'd say like elevating these conversations and like communicating them to our Congress people and say demanding change at that level too right now is potentially more impactful than it has been in 10 years for sure, and may be in the future. So go ahead, Justin, if you had something to say.
I just think that those connections are really important. I was on a call with grandmother Florida Mayo fighting line 3 pipeline. And when Kathy spoke at the National Poor People's Campaign, there were other folks from St. James, Louisiana to Catherine Coleman Flowers fighting, for real treatment, wastewater treatment in Lowndes County, Alabama. And so the ability to start making some of these connections and having our own playbook of sorts, I think, is a future state of movements like this. But for instance, I think about, maybe this is just like a private meeting that we should think is, how do we connect with the organizers, and then with our legislative contacts at each, and then the Congress people, right? And like that's power. So now we bring our group of 5, they bring their group of 5 organizers, and then we tell our close connections legislatively, like, hey, we want a meeting with both of you. Know what you're doing at Eugene, know what you're doing in Memphis. Let's work together and collaboratively and say, look, we can fight this, because the companies have learned from each other how to fight on so many different playing fields. And now we're in a moment where the zeitgeist of the moment, at least, has tipped toward communities being able to rally and organize and activate in a way that can actually change law and really change the future of communities. And so that's just a thought there.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the last 40 years of the environmental justice or the environmental movement, 50 years, has been predominantly white-led, I think intentionally excluding justice and frontline communities and playing by the rules, basically. And we have lost bad because of that combination. And so, I feel like MCAP is one example of doing the exact opposite. Frontline led, fight hard, don't take no for an answer, and do whatever you have to win the fights that we're going to do. So such an inspiration. And I hope folks who are in this class will support it. We'll keep getting the word out. And yeah, thanks again for telling us the story. Just a joy to be with both of you. So.
Thank you, Nick. And thank you to Kathy as well, and all the amazing, wonderful students. All of you get A's today. Don't let Professor Nick tell you any different. He only gets an A+ because we go way back. But no, super humbled and grateful for the opportunity, and truly for your hundreds of hours of work in helping us fight this too. Really appreciate you.
Likewise. Alrighty, folks. We will be back next week talking about some more fossil fuel fights, and stay warm. It's getting sunny all over this country. So see you soon.